Foster-Bell.
Mr Speaker, it's an absolute pleasure, to follow on from the right honourable member. The last remaining Privy Council is still sitting in the New Zealand Parliament. Sir, in the last week we have seen some very grave matters unfolding on the international scene, and as chairman of the NZ UK and the NZ France friendship groups, I want to put on the record here my personal condolences to the British people in particular, but to all of those countries which lost nationals in the attacks in Tunisia. The British nationals, in fact, 22 dead and others wounded, is the largest loss of British lives since the 7/7 London bombings 10 years ago. It's precipitated Scotland Yard's SO15 Counter-Terrorism Command's largest operation since those bombings, comprising of over 600 police officers. The Home Secretary, Theresa May, visited the site yesterday, and the House of Commons has observed a minute's silence. So, sir, I think it's very appropriate. We're mindful of our friends in democratic countries elsewhere who have been attacked, hurt and killed, and the families and friends of those who have lost their loved ones in those attacks. I'd also like to mention, Mr Speaker, the attack in France at Saint-Quentin-for-la-Vieille, in which Yassine Salhi, an ISIL terrorist, in the most barbarous way decapitated an innocent man and rammed a company van into a gasworks, causing further injuries and damage. These attacks, sir, were coordinated. They were at the behest of ISIS senior leader Abu Muhammad al-Adani, and they demonstrate why we, as a Western democracy, proud of our tradition of peace and democratic governance, need to cooperate with our friendly, like-minded countries and allies and ensure that our own domestic and internal security processes are sufficient to prevent such outrages ever happening in this realm of New Zealand. Sir, I want to talk to more perhaps mundane domestic matters now, after having spoken about that. We've seen unfolding in the opposition parties a drama which is perhaps equivalent to that recently released ABC documentary, The Killing Season, which depicts the internecine warfare within the Australian Labor Party between Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard. There are some chilling moments, sir, in that documentary where we see what can only be described as the sociopathy of Mr Rudd, but also the intense betrayal he felt when his formerly loyal, or his ostensibly loyal deputy, Ms Gillard, put the knife in. In fact, I'm a firm follower of that other TV series, Game of Thrones, and what we're seeing playing out across this House reminds me, and I don't want to put any spoilers in here for the New Zealand public, but it is reminiscent perhaps of those end-of-series bloodbaths that we see in that particular show. And I can only describe the Leader of the Opposition as New Zealand's political equivalent of Stannis Baratheon, that dour but treacherous member of that particular show, up against the Lannisters. That's Mr Cunliffe, the well-moneyed and very eloquent, smooth urban dwellers. Sir, in the New Zealand First Party there have also been ructions, and I want to put on the record in this House my respect and admiration for Tracy Martin. I've always found her a very, very good member to work with on the Education Select Committee, and I admire any member who brings a bill to this House like the Clothing of Orphans measure that she's brought in. And I can only say that the attempt by Mr Mark to remove her from that position must be the equivalent of the, well, let's call it the night of the short knives, given Mr Mark's stature. So I hope Ms Martin does remain in place, because she's been excellent to work with. Mr Speaker, we've had on the 1st of July some wonderful measures introduced by this government: free doctors' visits, free prescriptions, free after-hours care for under-13s. In the Wellington region, our children will be incredibly well catered for. There are 46,000 children within the Capital and Coast DHB district who will benefit from this measure, and I was delighted to see Dr Coleman and the Prime Minister launching it and choosing to launch it in Karori in the Wellington Central electorate today. My colleague, the Honourable Maggie Barry, also referred to the medical care that we provide at the other end of life, that is palliative care for those who are ending their lives or approaching the ends of their lives. And I particularly welcome the $4.6 million worth of the investment of over $30 million that Minister Barry referred to, which is coming into the Wellington region and will benefit those who are going through that very, very difficult stage of life where they are coming to the end of their life, perhaps suffering from a terminal disease. And I think that investment will be very, very welcome by not only the people in that situation, but their families. Thank you, sir.
So tragic to interrupt the member before we hear the latest update on the Simpsons or SpongeBob SquarePants. But the time for this debate has expired. I call on Government Orders of the Day 1 to 3.
Reserves and Other Lands Disposal Bill.